GST. Fine. And I told you earlier also that GST was implemented first time in the world by which country? France. In which year? 1949. So France was the first country to introduce goods and services tax back in 1949, but it was implemented in India 2017. Fine. So let's understand first the background why GST was implemented, and we will also discuss why there was a delay in the implementation of GST. Fine. So why the implementation happened and why implementation got much delayed. Okay. Then we will understand the structure of GST, how GST works. Then what are the major benefits of the GST and what are the existing problems in the GST and how GST works and why GST is called as best example of cooperative federalism in India. Fine. So these issues we are going to discuss today under GST. Fine. Now, GST is a direct tax or indirect tax? Indirect tax. Fine. And what is the structure or what is the basic thing of the indirect tax? Any indirect tax, if it is an indirect tax, then burden and incidence will be on same person or the different person? Different person. Tax is imposed on one person, but it will be paid by another person. It is an indirect tax. When incidence and burden is on same person, it is a direct tax. So till then now we have discussed the direct tax. In India, both union and states have power to impose tax. Under which article? 246. So Article 246 of Indian Constitution tells about union list, then state list and concurrent list. So these list tells about power, in which area who can make legislation. So in what area union can make legislation, in what area state can make a legislation, and in what area both can make a legislation. But the residuary power means if any issue is not mentioned here, then automatically will go to whom? Union. So when the power is distributed under the Constitution, the power to tax was given to states as well as whom? Center. So both got the power to what? Tax. But in original Constitution and before GST, no tax was mentioned here. Means either tax will be applicable by whom? Union, or it will be by states. Before GST, no taxation was mentioned in the concurrent list. Fine. And this is one of the reasons why the GST implementation got delayed. One of the reasons. Not only reason, but one of the reasons, because for that you have to amend which article? 246. Fine. Until unless you are not going to change through the amendment, you cannot implement the GST. Okay. So that was one reason which we are going to discuss. But before the GST, tax will be applicable either by union or by what? State. Fine. Now, as I told you, taxes are basically of two types. If incidence and burden is same, it is what? Direct tax. And if incidence and burden is different, then it is indirect tax. Fine. So, before GST, either union or state can impose what? Indirect tax. Fine. So, indirect taxation. Indirect tax. Fine. indirect tax have one specific characteristic, and that is they are always regressive in nature. Means, regressive means, if we will see here tax rate and income, tax rate and income, then tax rate is going to what? Decrease, as income is going to increase. This is what we are from what? Regressive taxation. Fine, regressive taxation. And indirect taxes, as I said, that they are what? Regressive in the nature. Fine. For example, on the production, there is a tax known as excise duty. Fine. On production, the tax is implemented, and that tax is known as what? Excise duty. So, if we will follow progressive system, progressive taxation system means if income will increase,
the x-axis and y-axis should be opposite, I guess. The tax rate and income rate.
income is 100.
So high tax rate.
And is income will increase to 1000. Tax rate will increase or decrease in regressive taxation?
Yes.
Are you here?
Yes.
Properly?
Yes.
Mind, body, soul, everything is there now. So if regressive taxation, what regressive taxation means? Income increases, tax rate decreases. Income is less, tax is high. Income is increasing, tax rate is decreasing. This is the regressive taxation you have understood in the class now. Got it? Clear? But if it is a progressive tax, then what will happen? As income increases, tax rate will increase. Fine? This is what progressive. Now, suppose if we are going to implement progressive taxation system on what? Excise duty. We have what? Progressive tax in what? Excise duty. What is excise duty? Tax on production. And we have a mindset ki what we are going to do, as production is going to increase, tax rate is also going to increase. Why? Because we are going to follow what? Progressive system. Then what will happen? As production is going to increase, tax rate is also going to what? Increase. Means when the production is of 100 unit, maybe there will be 2% tax. And if production will increase to 1000 unit, maybe tax rate is what? 5%. If production increase to 10,000 unit, tax rate is what? 10%. So as production is going to increase, tax rate is also going to what? Increase. Then the cost of the goods and services is going to increase or decrease? Increase, as increase in the production. So it will help producer and consumer, or it will demotivate producer and customer? Demotivate. Production should be what? Increase. So we have to what? We have to encourage the production, and that is why rather than going for what? Progressive taxation, we will go for what? Regressive taxation. Means as production is going to increase, tax rate is going to what? Decrease. So it will help producer, and it will also help what? Consumer. Fine. So this is why governments generally go for what? Regressive taxation. Fine. And one more tax I told you, parallel taxation. Under parallel taxation, what I told you, tax rate will be remain constant. So doesn't matter production increases or decreases, tax rate will be what? Remain same. But in general, they are in what? Indirect taxes are regressive in the nature. Fine. And I told you one tax known as what? Excise duty. So I have explained, just explained why indirect taxes are regressive in the nature. Have you understood? So if in the exam they will ask the question, consider the following statement about indirect taxes. Fine. Consider the following statement about indirect taxes. In the indirect taxes, burden and incidence is on same person. Statement number 2. Regressive taxes are one of the taxes which is implemented in the production activity. These two statements are correct or incorrect? First statement is incorrect. Why? Indirect taxes is what? Indirect taxes are burden and incidence on different person. Whereas second statement is correct. Why? Because indirect taxes, production tax on production is a direct tax or indirect tax? Indirect tax. Why indirect tax? You are going to apply the tax on production. Means producer have to pay. But ultimately, producer what tax he has paid included in the cost of what? Product. Ultimately, it will be paid by whom? Consumer. So this is why tax on production is direct tax or indirect tax? Indirect tax. So indirect taxes are regressive in the nature. So second statement is what? Correct. Fine. So in exam, they will ask simple statements. But those simple statements are twisted so that you have to apply your analytical understanding and conceptual understanding. Only then you are able to answer. Fine. Now, so we understood indirect taxes are regressive in the nature. Fine. Now let's take an example. Before GST, before GST, union and state. What kind of the taxes they are implementing? So before GST, union and state on production. So union can apply the tax on production as well as what? State can also go for taxation. So union is applying central excise duty. Fine. State can apply what? State excise duty. Similarly, on sales, there will be central sales tax. Fine. And in the state, it is value added tax. VAT. Fine. Value added tax. So in this way, on production and sale, two taxes are there. Apart from that, there are many other taxes which may be applied by union as well as what? State. For example, if goods is entering in the state of Telangana, fine, good is coming from state of Tamil Nadu and it will enter at where? It will enter at the border of Telangana. So when any good which is shipped or it is coming to state of Telangana for sales purpose or production purpose, then state of Telangana have a right to impose tax on it and it is known as entry tax. Entry tax. Fine. Again, this is what I am discussing before GST. Fine. So, entry tax. So, state have a power to impose a tax if goods and services are moving in the state or out of the state. State have the power. But here you also have to understand, apart from the state, even local bodies was also having a power to impose a tax on entry of goods. And that was known as octroi. It was known as octroi. Means state, the good enter at where? Telangana. Now, from in the Telangana, it is moving towards where? Hyderabad. So, if it is moving in the Hyderabad, GHMC, Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation. Fine. So, GHMC also have power to what? Impose tax on its entry, known as what? Octroi. Fine. So, entry tax. Similarly, if we talk about central government. So central government in 1994, when Dr. Manmohan Singh was India's finance minister, he initiated new tax known as service tax or services tax. Fine. And government said that in 1994, if a person is booking a ticket in railways, first class, first AC, or a person is going to book a ticket of airlines, fine, then that person have to pay service tax. Fine, person have to pay service tax. So in 1994, three things they have introduced. On these things, the service tax will be applicable. And from next year onwards, government started expanding the list. For example, 1995 government said that apart from the airlines and first AC, Now, even if you will book the second AC ticket, it will be taxable under what? Service tax. Next year, third AC, then sleeper. So gradually, government started expanding the scope of what? Service tax. Finally, in 1999, government came with the revolutionary idea. Government said that we are introducing what? Negative list in what? Service tax. So people ask you what is negative list here? So government said that very easy, very simple. On these goods, for example, A, B, C, D, E. Fine. Except these things. Service tax will be automatically applicable on what? Everything. Except these things, tax will be applicable on rest of the things. So what negative list means? Negative list means that when government is going to exempt something from the taxation, then they will give the idea of what? Negative list. Means apart from these things, all other things will be under what? GST, which services are there. So we have multiple services. Except these services, all other services will be in the zone of what? Service tax. Fine, service tax. And suppose that if any new service will come, then automatically it will come under the provision of what? Service tax until unless it is going to enter at where? Negative list. So have you understood the concept of negative list? So in this way, center or any taxation authority, when they want to expand the scope of taxation, fine, then what they introduce? Positive list or negative list? Negative list. What is positive list? On which things that will be applicable. This is what positive list. And when you are going to say ki on these things we are not going to implement the tax, that means apart from those things, all other things are what? Under tax, and if something new will come, automatically it will be what? Taxed. Understood the idea of positive list and negative list? So in this way, there are multiple taxes by central government as well as what? State government. Fine. And for some people, it was going good. It was going good. But the problem is that when there is a different taxation, fine, then tax administration becomes problematic. We have to deploy different officials, different department, different organization for what purpose? Tax compliance, tax collection, all these things. So unnecessary, it will what? Increase the expenditure of what? Tax collection. You have to apply different people. Fine, different departments. So that is why tax administration become complex. This is the problem at the government structure. Okay, when we have too many multiple taxes, too many multiple authorities, ministries, organizations, then the collection of the taxes itself become what? Problematic. And those people who are supposed to pay the tax, they are also what? In problem. This tax, this tax I have to pay. Fine. And that is why tax grievances is also very high. Public is complaining. Fine. We have to invest too much time on the tax compliance. So public as well as government both are facing what? This complex issue. Government is facing for the collection purpose and public is facing what? To paying purpose. And sometimes what happens? Sometimes even public want to comply with the tax. But because of this tedious process, long process, going here and there, that's why public said that, okay, I'm not going to pay. Whenever the government will send a notice, we will play the notice. Fine, but we are not going to pay. So this is why there is a frustration among the taxpayers, especially production class. And if you are looking to make your country as a production hub, fine, you are eyeing to make a country as a production hub. You are eyeing to compete with whom? Country like China. You want to make tax structure simple or complex? Simple. This is why, since India has introduced the reforms in 1991, there is a talk that we should introduce what? We should introduce simplified taxation system in India in both contexts, for direct taxes as well as what? Indirect taxes. So the tax reform was an agenda of government. Fine. Indian economy reforms was happened in 1980, which is called as what? LPG reforms. So that was structural reform. Fine. You have changed the nature of Indian economy. But in that reform process, we have not touched the taxation system. IMF, World Bank, ADB, OECD, many organizations have consistently telling India through their reports and committees that India need to reform what? Taxation structure. But in India, the problem is, for example, on good A, fine, on good A, VAT, that is what? Tax on sales. So state of Telangana is applying 10% tax on what? Good A. Whereas state of Tamil Nadu is applying 18% tax. Gujarat is applying 4% tax. Fine. So every state have their own taxation structure based on their understanding from this thing how much tax we are going to get it. So this is why it is very difficult to convince the states that all of you have to make sure that there should be one uniform tax. So this is very difficult to what? Convince states. Fine. So this is one issue. Another issue is okay, suppose that every state got agreed. Okay, we are agreed to have what? Suppose that 5% tax on this good A. Every state agreed. Now even everyone is agreed. But why? If Telangana is applicable, applying how much? 10%. And Tamil Nadu is applying how much? 18%. So they are going to lose the tax or not? So how you are going to convince them? How you going to convince them? Are you going to threat them? No, not possible. So how you are going to convince them? You have to tell them, see, if the GST will be implemented, then tax rate will decrease. So initially you will have a loss. Initially you will have a loss, but because of the decrease in the taxation, the consumption of that good is going to increase. And if the consumption is going to increase gradually, even at lower rate of tax, you are able to get what? Higher tax revenue. Right now, you have a higher tax rate, 10% and 18%. And because of that, many people are not able to purchase or consume. But if you are going to decrease the tax, gradually, what will happen? Gradually, production will increase and consumption will increase. Why consumption will increase? Because taxation is going to what? Relax. So initially you will have a loss. Initially you will have a loss, but gradually your tax assets are going to what? Increase. And that is why you have to implement. State said, okay, fine, agreed. But what about the initial loss? What about the initial loss? Are you going to compensate? Government of India said that, okay, we will think about that. Then states also said that, okay, we will also think about that. Fine. So both are thinking. Fine. So both have think for at least 5-6 years. Then finally, government of India said that, acha, okay, you have think a lot. I am giving my verdict. Okay, I am ready to pay the compensation. Acha. For how much duration? Fine. States have asked for how much duration. Government of India said that 2 to 3 years. The state said that 7 years. Government of India said that 3 years. State said that 6 years. Acha, settled. How many years? 5 years. So for 5 years, government of India will pay the compensation, and states have to agree to give up their power to tax. And we, means central government, will also give up their power to what? Tax. So now, government of India, who have their own power to impose the tax, they will give up. Along with states will also give up the power of what? Taxation. And then one unified tax will be applicable. Fine. So central states agreed. So in principle agreed. Fine. So in principle they agreed. So now you have agreed, but still the big hurdle is there. What? Because taxation is a part of Article 246, where the power of union, state, and concurrent list is there. in Article 246. Now you have to change in what? This thing. Why? Because till then now, taxation power either with whom? Union or with whom? States. But now you are going to give power to both to legislate in the matter of what? Taxation. So you have to remove that entry from union list and state list and put it in which list? Concurrent list. And for that you have to amend the constitution. Constitution amendment can be happened in three ways. One is a simple amendment process. For example, amendment to the citizenship. So citizenship amendment can be simply happen in what? Parliament by simple majority. But certain provisions of constitutions which are federal in the nature, they need a special majority under Article 368. And under Article 368, there are two different type of amendment process. Fine. So in one process, what you need to do? Special majority in the House of Parliament, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, with the special majority, you have passed and you have sent to whom? President. President have given the assent and it is amended. For example, power of election commission. Fine. You just need to what? You just need to pass that bill in both houses of the parliament and it will be implemented. But if certain provisions are there which is going to hit the federal structure of the country, then apart from the parliament, half of the states in India must pass that bill with simple majority. Fine. So means if you want to implement the GST, for implementation of GST, what you have to do? For the implementation of GST, first you have to go for what? First you have to go to the parliament. Once the parliament is going to pass that bill, you have to send it to the president. And before president is going to give the assent, you have to send that bill to whom? Half of the states must pass. Fine. So this process itself is going to take minimum 5 to 6 years. So this is why in 2009-10 you was agreed, almost agreed. Okay, in principle we are agreed. Fine, in principle we are agreed to implement what? GST. But this constitutional process itself what? Long. Fine. So this is why it took a long time, almost 19 years to implement what? GST. But that GST, which was implemented on 1st July 2017, it was biggest tax reform in this country till then date. Fine. So it's the biggest tax reform in the country till then date. Fine. Achha. So these are certain reasons. Fine. But one more reason which is very important to understand from the exam point of view for the implementation of GST. See, I told you what? I told you one reason for implementation of GST is what? Because of the complex structure of taxation. Complex structure of taxation, it is causing problem to government as well as what? Public, especially who? Producer, to pay the tax. But there was another reason which is known as the biggest reason. And that is why it is said that if GST will be implemented, it is going to drastically change the consumption pattern of the public in India. Why? Before GST, when the taxes are applied, all these taxes are applied, then there is an effect known as cascading effect. Cascading effect was there. How? Suppose that A is a producer. Fine? A is a producer. So A have value added of how much? 100 rupees. Fine? He did the valuation of how much? 100 rupees. And now he is going to sell whom? B. Fine. B is going to purchase this good from A at what price? 100 rupees. Fine. But B, after getting this good from A, he is going to do further valuation and then he will sell to whom? Customer. Fine. So A is going to sell whom? B, and then B will do the valuation and he will sell to whom? Customer. Fine. So when A got this thing and he make the value addition of how much? Value addition of how much? 100 rupees. Fine. Now suppose VAT, value added tax, here it is of 10%. It is of how much? 10%. And excise duty is also of what? 10%. Fine. So when he is doing this production and he is making the value, what is the value? 100. Now excise duty will be applicable because excise duty is on production. So what tax will be applicable first? Production tax or sales tax? Production tax. So what you have applied? 10 rupees you have applied. Fine. 10 rupees tax you have applied. Now what happened? When the VAT is going to be applied, actually it have to apply on what? 100. But it is going to apply on what? 110. Fine. So rather than the VAT should be value of what? This is the value addition by whom? A. A is going to sell whom? B. So when B is going to purchase, fine, B is going to purchase from whom? A, value 100, excise duty 10. Now then you are going to calculate the VAT. Rather than calculating the VAT on this valuation, you are going to calculate the VAT on what? 1 and 110. And this is why VAT become how much? 11 rupees. So total amount paid by B to A is how much? 121. Fine. So now he paid 121. Fine. Now suppose he also did the valuation of 200 rupees. How much valuation he did? 200 rupees. But B has purchased this thing from A for his own usage or further valuation. Further valuation. Fine. Now what will happen? Here, what? B is going to take the receipt from whom? A. This receipt he will take from whom? A. And he will go to whom? Government. And he will say that, see, I purchased this item from whom? A. For what purpose? Value addition purpose. So the excise duty and VAT which I have paid, ultimately it should be paid by me or the consumer. It is a tax. So ultimately who will pay? Consumer. So I need refund of that. I need a refund of that money. What money? Which I have paid in the form of what? VAT, and I have paid in the form of what? Excise duty. Fine. I need a refund. So government said that okay, fine, we will refund you. Fine. Now B did the valuation of how much? 200. But that 21 rupees which he paid to whom? Government. Government is going to refund. So what price he will make? He paid how much? 121. How much valuation he did? 200 rupees. But that 21 rupees which he paid to A and A have given to whom? Government. A have given to whom? Government. And government is going to refund whom? B. So what do you think? When he will create an invoice, he will do what? 121. Fine. The amount he paid on the valuation and what valuation he made? 200. Now minus how much? 21. Because 21 is going to be refunded by whom? Government. Fine. Now what is the value, total value? 300. Fine. 300. Now it is going to sold to whom? Customer. Now suppose that when this good is ready, here the excise duty is again what? 10%, but VAT increased to what? 15%. Fine, finished goods. VAT increased to what? 15%. So now if the VAT increased to how much? 15%, 300 plus how much? 30. What? Excise duty? 10. Fine. Now total value is what? 330. And now 300. VAT should be applicable on what? 300. But VAT will be applicable on how much? 330. How much VAT? 15%. How much? You have to give the CSAT now. Calculation should be strong. How much? Itna time. 33 multiplied by 15. How much? कैलकुलेट करो अभी कैलकुलेट करके बताओ 49.5 5. CSET देना है कि नहीं तुम लोगों को? Do you want to give the CSET or not? And this amount of time you are going to take such a silly calculation, then it is not for you. Okay, calculation should be very fast and accurate. If you are going to take that amount of time in the calculation, it is never going to work for you. How much? 49.5. But imagine that if it is applicable on 300, then it will be what? 45. Means customer is paying how much? 4 rupees 50 paisa extra on that good. Fine. And this tax on tax, actually you are paying VAT. You are paying VAT as a customer, we are paying VAT. We should pay the VAT on value addition. But we are paying the tax on tax. Means value should be 300, tax should be what? On 300. But actually that tax is applicable on what? 330. So this is why it is called as what? Cascading effect. The government is pocketing that money. But government also know that this cascading effect impact badly on consumers' spending capacity. Why? See, 4 rupees 50 paisa, he paid extra here. But if he is not going to pay that 4 rupees 50 paisa, fine, then this 4 rupees 50 paisa can be spent on any other consumption. So on the same goods consumption, people are paying more. Fine. But if they are not going to be hit by what? They are not going to be hit by this thing, then what will help them? They can spend that money on other goods. So if we are able to remove the effect of cascading, then public's consumption power is going to what? Increase. And this is why it is very important to remove what? Cascading effect or cascading effect of tax. Fine. So with this intention, government want to introduce what? GST. And it was said that if India will able to implement GST, then India can increase their GDP by 4% in next 5 years. And over the period of time, GST is going to revolutionize the economy. Fine. So with this positive optimism, government and states, government means union government and state have initiated the process of what? Change in the GST. Fine. And with this intention, government have implemented what? GST. But as I said that, there is a need for what? Constitutional amendment in order to implement what? GST. So write it down. First, give a heading, constitutional provisions related to GST. Constitutional provisions related to GST. Right? GST was implemented. GST was implemented through GST was implemented through 101st. GST was implemented through 101st Constitutional Amendment Act. GST was implemented through 101st Constitutional Amendment Act 2016, 101st Constitutional Amendment Act 2016. On 1st July, on 1st July 2017. 1st July 2017. Fine. Now next line, write Article 246A. Article 246A. It provides power. It provides power to both. It provides power to both union as well as state. Union as well as state to implement GST. To implement GST. Fine. Now, right next. Means, have you understood what Article 246A said that? Article 246A said that once the GST will be applied by whom? Suppose Government of India went to the Parliament, and in the Parliament, government have introduced the Act. Change. What change? We are going to allow center as well as state to make laws related to what? GST. So this is an enabling provision. Enabling provision, do you understand what is enabling provision is? What is give a power? Give a power to what? Power to what? To implement GST? No. Gives the power to make law. To make law regarding GST. So see, when the constitution was amended, so constitution amendment itself, GST is not going to be applicable. Constitution amendment enabled center as well as state to make certain laws related to what? GST. For example, goods and services tax have basically four different types. One is IGST, fine, CGST, SGST, UTGST. So SGST stand for State Goods and Services. CGST stand for IGST stand for Integrated Goods and Services Tax. So integrated goods and services tax is in the domain of union. Fine. So when you have amended the constitution, then you have put IGST in which list? You will put IGST in which list? Because IGST can be implemented by who? Union. So IGST will go in which list? Union's power. Fine. Similarly, SGST, State Goods and Services Tax, it will be in which list? So amendment was an enabling process which allows state legislature and parliament to make certain laws related to what? Implementation of GST. Understood? So amendment itself is not going to implement it. After amendment, you have to do what? Make a law. Fine. So for example, Supreme Court said that the right to education is what? Fundamental right. But by this, do you think that the fundamental right is available? It is going to be available only when government, means parliament, is going to pass a law. The Supreme Court directed government. The right to education is a fundamental right, and you have to initiate a law so that right to education must be guaranteed. So under this direction, parliament has passed what? Right to Education Act. And under Right to Education Act, certain age group people can claim government for what? Providing the education. So when court or parliament pass any amendment or order, it can be implemented only by enabling act. Understood? So amendment itself is not going to change this process. After amendment, you have to make a law or you have to change law according to the amendment. So Article 246A was added and it has allowed, okay, for the GST, union, means parliament, as well as state legislature can make laws. Fine. Now write next. Article 269A. Article 269A. It talks about GST. It talks about GST on interstate, interstate goods and services. Interstate goods and services. Interstate goods and services. That is IGST. Interstate goods and services. That is IGST. Levied and collected by union, levied and collected by union, but appropriated between union and state, appropriated between union and states on recommendation of GST Council. chairperson of GST Council. Fine. Now right next, Article 279A. Article 279A. It talks about GST Council. It talks about GST Council. Now give us a heading: GST Council. GST Council. GST Council is comprised of Union Finance Minister, Finance Minister with state portfolio, in charge of revenue. Means state finance minister. As I told you, na, ki finance ministry is a big ministry. So there is a cabinet minister, and to assist, there are two state ministers. So finance minister as well as state minister with what in charge? Charge of revenue. He will be the representative from whom? These two will be representative of from union. These two will be representative from whom? Union. Okay. Whereas states are represented by state finance minister. States are represented by state finance minister or minister in charge of finance and revenue. Generally, what happens in the state? Generally, in the many of the states, the finance portfolio is held by chief minister himself. Right? So, finance portfolio is held by whom? Chief minister himself. But he has given a duty of collecting of the revenue. He has given to some other person. Fine. So, chief minister himself is holding the portfolio of what? Chief minister himself holding the portfolio of finance, but he has given the charge of revenue to someone else. Then state will be represented by who? State will be represented by the person who is in charge of what? Revenue. And if there is a proper finance minister in the state, for example, Punjab and West Bengal, both have their own person who is in charge of what? Finance. Then in that case, the minister, will be represented. But in the case of, for example, Uttar Pradesh, Babaji himself is having the portfolio of what? Finance ministry. So because he himself is holding the portfolio of finance ministry, then the person who is in charge of revenue, fine, the person who is in charge of revenue, he will represent the state of Uttar Pradesh in the GST Council. Understood? Right, next. Subheading: decision making in GST Council. Decision making in GST Council. As per Article 279A, GST Council, as per Article 279A, GST Council will take decision. GST Council will take decision. GST Council will take decision through majority voting. And 3/4 vote is required. 3/4 vote is required to take decision. 3/4 vote is required to take decision. And voting in the GST Council is based on weightaged voting. Is based on weightaged voting. Weightaged voting. Put a dash and write unions vote value. Unions vote value is one third. Is one third of total vote. And rest of the vote with whom? States. Rest of the voting power with whom? States. Right in the next line. Though GST Council have a mandate of, though GST Council have a mandate of decision through majority vote. Decision through majority vote. Through majority vote. But council has decided. To take decision on the basis of consensus. Council has decided to take the decision on consensus. Except one instance. Council all the decisions. Council took all the decisions through consensus. This one exception was case of GST on lottery tickets. Case of GST on lottery tickets. Fine. So only one instance is there when the council went for division of the vote. Otherwise, all the decisions till the date 55 round of meeting have been conducted of GST Council. 55 rounds. But in all those 50 rounds of meetings, one instance is there when they went for what? Vote. Because certain states are adamant that no, this should not be the GST rate. In certain states, lotteries are very popular. In certain states, they are not very popular. So in those states, like Kerala was adamant that we do not want to change lottery. Means we do not want to go for a higher taxation on what? Lotteries. So it took almost 6-7 rounds of meeting to develop the consensus. And when it was stuck, then finally Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji said that no, let's go for what? Let's go for exception. When the exception is in general, then we have to accept that exception as a general thing. And with this philosophical code, finally, council went for what? Voting. But apart from this one exception, if you will see, council always take decisions on what basis? Consensus basis. Though there is a provision of what? Voting. And if central government means the ruling party at union, if they have a capacity, and they are ruling in at least 8 to 9 states. If central government ruled by one political party and the same political party, if they have what? If they have their government in 8 to 10 states, they can easily dominate what? They can easily dominate the GST Council. But here they have given the best example of what? Cooperative federalism. So in the context of federalism, generally two concepts are very popular. One is cooperative federalism and another is competitive federalism. So on certain issues, we have to do what? we have to cooperate with each other. But apart from the cooperation, we also have to what? Compete with each other. Last year, what happened? And one big company want to establish their chip making plant in India, and they have what? They have identified either Gujarat or what? Maharashtra. So we have to establish plant. Vedanta was a company, and they want to establish their plant either Gujarat or at where? Maharashtra. Both are ruled by whom? BJP at that point of time. So both states started fighting where this plant is going to be established. And ultimately, it went to where? Gujarat. And that became a political issue in what? Maharashtra election. Fine. This project supposed to go at where? Maharashtra, but it took by whom? Gujarat under the influence of Prime Minister. Fine. So maybe it is a political issue. Fine. But this political issue is not considered as a bad thing. Fine. Both states, in fact, other states also have to be what? Competitive enough so that they can try to attract more and more investment in their state. So in this way, states are going to uplift the competitive spirit. But on certain issues which are regulatory in the nature, then each and everyone what? Have to cooperate with each other. So cooperative federalism and competitive federalism should be there. But GST is an example of what? GST is an example of cooperative federalism. Why? Because GST Council takes decisions on what basis? Consensus basis. Fine. Now, give us a wording. On what matters GST Council give recommendation? On what matters GST Council give its recommendation? Number one. Number one, items to be included or excluded. Item to be included or excluded from GST. Item to be included or excluded from GST. Number two, rate of GST on particular item. Rate of GST on particular item. Means what? Suppose that there is a good A. So on that good A, there will be GST or no. GST or no GST. Who will decide? Council will decide. Now you have decided, okay, A will be in the domain of what? GST. GST will be applicable on what? A. Then at what rate GST will be applicable on that good? It will be also decided by whom? Council. Right, next. GST rate rationalization. GST rate rationalization is also decided by GST Council. Also decided by GST Council. Fine. Now, next point. Any other matter, next point, any other matter related to GST. Any other matter related to GST is decided by GST Council. Is decided by GST Council. So there is a GST Council, and it's a constitutional body or statutory body. GST Council is a statutory body or constitutional body? It's a constitutional body. Why? It is mentioned in what? Article 279A. So sometimes you like what you were saying that it is a constitutional body because it is mentioned in the constitution. This is what you were saying. And have you heard that what I was saying? It's a constitutional body because it is mentioned in Article 279A. You are saying that it's a constitutional body because it is mentioned in the constitution. And I am saying that it is a constitutional body because it is mentioned in Article 279A. So have you understood the difference? You are just having this thing, ki, acha, it's a constitutional body because it is mentioned in the constitution. But if you will try to read in this way, Election Commission or any organization is a constitutional body or not because they are mentioned in this article. So this is the another way how you can what? How you can memorize the articles. Not all, only important articles. Fine, important articles. Fine. So 279 is an important article or not? It is very important article because it is telling about what? The constitutional body, that is what? GST Council. Fine. So when the GST Council was made, and you can see that it's a constitutional body and having what? A lot of power to decide on every matter related to what? GST. Then the next issue arises ki whether the recommendation of GST Council is binding or non-binding. On whom? States it is binding or non-binding. So that issue, obviously, that become an issue, and anything become an issue between central and state. It will be addressed by whom? Supreme Court. Why Supreme Court? Because Supreme Court have original jurisdiction with respect to any dispute between whom? Center and state. So case went to where? Supreme Court. And Supreme Court said that on primary issues, state have the power to legislate on their own. State have power to legislate on their own. They are not bound by recommendation made by what? GST Council. Whereas on the secondary issues, the decision made by what? Decision made by council is what? Binding in nature. Fine. Now what is it? As I said that GST when it was implemented. Fine. So let's understand few things here. So suppose that there is a trade or better sale of good. Fine. First case within state. If sale of is happening what? Within the state, then in this case, CGST and SGST will be applicable. Or if it is a union, then what? Union territory, then rather than SGST, what will be there? UGST. Fine, UTGST there. So if it is happening at where? Within the state. And if it is happening interstate, then there will be what? IGST, interstate goods and services tax. Fine. Now, how it works actually? Suppose that on good A, fine. This time I'll take B. Good B. So on good B, there is a what? Interstate trade and commerce interstate, and here the GST rate is 18%. GST rate is what? 18%. Now this good is under what? Interstate, means it is produced in one state and it is going for sale for what? Another state. So how IGST will be implemented? IGST rate will be what? 18%. Fine, 18% IGST will be applicable. But if the same good is in what? Within the state, then what will happen? 9% CGST and 9% SGST, total how much? 18%. Fine, 18%. In this way, it will be applicable. How the proceedings will be proceeded means who is going to how much we will discuss. But in this way, means any legislation related to what? SGST. Who will legislate in this matter? State or union? State. So state have a power to make certain laws related to what? SGST. Under SGST, who have a power? State. Fine. State have a power. So there is what? There is a GST Council. So GST Council can take decision on this. What rate will be there? But if GST Council is doing what? Is making any decision how state is going to make a law regarding what? SGST. So this recommendation is not binding. What is binding? If GST Council is going to decide the rate will be not 18%, but it will be how much? 12%. So this decision of GST Council is what? Binding on the state. But how this law is going to be made? State GST law. Here, the recommendation of GST Council is not binding in nature. This is the decision made by whom? Supreme Court back in 2022. So, with respect to the rate change, it's a secondary issue. The rate change is what? Secondary issue. Law making on GST is what? Primary issue. So, on primary issues, GST Council's recommendations are non-binding in nature, given by whom? Supreme Court. Whereas Supreme Court also said that if the matter is what? Secondary in the nature, then it is binding on all. Understood this thing? Write it down. In 2022, Supreme Court gave a judgment. Supreme Court gave a judgment on Supreme Court given a judgment on GST Council decision making power. GST Council decision making power. And under that, only secondary recommendations, only secondary legislation, sorry, not recommendation, only secondary legislation related recommendations, secondary legislation related recommendations of GST Council is binding in the nature on states, whereas matter of primary legislation are not binding in the nature, are not binding in the nature. Fine. Now, understand one more thing here. I said that 18% IGST, 99% what? 99% CGST and SGST. Here, understand one more interesting thing related to what? GST. The GST is known as consumption based tax. Consumption based tax. For example, good X, fine, it is produced in Maharashtra. It is produced in where? Maharashtra. But it went to Himachal Pradesh. For sale and sold there. Where? Himachal Pradesh. Fine. So it is manufactured at where? Maharashtra, but went where? So what tax will be applicable? IGST or SGST? IGST. So now suppose that here the value of good, this good is having the value of 50,000. Right? So 50,000 rupees what values there. And GST at the rate of 18%. Fine. GST at the rate of how much? 18%. So here IGST value will be IGST value will be 50,000, 18%. How much? 9,000. IGST collected how much? 9,000 rupees IGST collected. Fine. Same good. Same good. Produced in where? Maharashtra. Other case. Sold in Maharashtra. It is sold at where? Maharashtra. So if it is sold at Maharashtra, 50,000 rupees is the value, and then 4,500 what? At the rate of CGST, and 4,500 at the rate of what? SGST. Fine. Now, here IGST is collected how much? 9,000. And this 9,000 will also 4,500. 4,500. 4,500 will go to union. And this 4,500 go to what? State. But question is, which state? Which state? Maharashtra or Gujarat? Sorry, Himachal. Which state? Answer is Himachal Pradesh. And this is why it is what? Consumption based tax. So the state which is going to consume, right? The state which is going to consume, that state is legitimate owner of the GST value which is applied on that. Understood? Why it is called consumption based tax? The consumption in where, at what place consumption is going to happen. That place or that state or UT is eligible for what? Getting the GST value of it. Fine. So tell me, those states who are very good in the production, like Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, fine, Telangana, fine, they are known as production hub. Whereas consumption is going to happen where the population is higher. Fine, UP, Bihar, and other states which are having higher population. So, because consumption is going to happen there, then the benefit of GST is going to be the state. Those states who are highest consumer rather than what? Producer. So, do you think that this GST system is helpful for production? For states who are doing higher production, is that helpful for them? Yes or no? Yes or no? GST, if you will go by this example, it is clear it is not helping to those states who are what? Who are doing more production. It is helping to whom? Who are going to consume more. But the idea is that the unified GST system have decreased the taxation. It has decreased what? Overall taxation. Earlier on same item, maybe tax will be something around 24% because of cascading effect. Now, because of the cascading effect is gone, tax rate is how much? 18%. Why cascading effect gone? Because all the taxes which are applied on different bases. For example, what I told you that. I told you that earlier it was what? Earlier it was excise duty. Fine. Plus what? VAT. Now both are combined and known as what? Single tax. That is what? GST. So in this way, we have removed what? Cascading effect. Fine. Cascading effect. So production, doing a production activity become easier than earlier. Consumption is also going to what? Increase. So because consumption increase, doing the production is much easier right now. So states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, and other Gujarat like states, what production capacity they do have earlier. Now their production capacity is what? Further increased. Employment further increase in that state. Because employment is increased in those states, that is why the income and consumption is also increased. So indirectly, maybe this profit is going to which state? Himachal Pradesh. But because of increased production, the value of what? 4,500, in which case? Within the state. It's going to where? State of Maharashtra. Fine. So in the interstate, when the goods is moving from one state to another state for consumption purpose, the benefit goes to whom? The benefit goes to consumption state. But because production is going to further increase at where? Maharashtra. Why? Because of the GST. Because of the GST, Here what happened? Because of the GST tax rate, which was effectively how much? 24%. Now it is what? 18%. So because it is 18%, what happened? The sale what? Further increased. So those states who are just consuming, their consumption capacity is increased, but because consumption capacity is increased, production is also what? Increased. And production increased, and that is why sale in the state of Maharashtra also increased. So overall, there is a benefit of what? GST. There is a beneficial thing regarding to what? GST. Have you understood this thing? How GST is helpful? Fine. But GST also has certain issues. Fine. One important issue with GST have, that is A, B, C, then customer. Fine. Suppose A have the value of how much? 1,000 rupees. No GST implemented because he just did the validation. He has created this thing on their own. So 1,000 rupees. But when he want to sell whom? B. The GST rate is what? Suppose that 18%. So B is going to pay how much? B is going to pay how much? B is going to pay how much? 1,180 rupees is going to pay whom? A. And what A is going to do? A is going to give 180 rupees to whom? Government. He have given 180 rupees to whom? Government. Now, he sold to whom? B. B paid how much? And B did the validation of how much? B did the validation of, suppose that 2,000. So now B have paid the validation of how much? 2,000, and he paid how much? So production cost is how much? 1,180. Valuation 2,000. Fine. GST refund 1,180 rupees. So what will be the price? 3,000 plus GST of how much? 18%. 18% GST again. 18% GST again applicable. So what will be the value? 3. So GST rate will be 540. So total value is how much? 540 rupees. So B have made the invoice of how much? 540 rupees and given to whom? C. Fine. That means C paid how much? 3,540 rupees. And of this 540 rupees paid by B to whom? Government. And then government refunded how much? 180 rupees to whom? B. Why? B have paid the GST now. But B is a final consumer or producer? Producer. So B is not a producer, not a consumer. That's why GST will be not applicable to him, and he refunded that money. He got the refund from whom? Government. He paid to whom? A. But do you know what is the unique feature here? Now, because the money is refunded, money will be refunded only when A is going to what? A is going to submit the tax to whom? Government. If A has not submitted the tax to whom? Government, then B is going to produce that list. I have paid the GST, so I need refund. So who is going to be investigated by the government? Why you have not paid it? Fine. And suppose that A sold 100 quantity. A sold how much quantity? 100 quantity. And if he sold 100 quantity and one unit is costing, one unit cost is how much? 1,000 now. One unit is costing how much? 1,000. And how much he sold? 100 unit. So total sale of how much rupees? 1 lakh rupees sale is there. 1 lakh rupees sale is there. So as per the government record, he sold how many quantities? 100 quantity and make a money of how much? 1 lakh. Fine. So he made the profit of how much? 1 lakh rupees. So he is liable to pay corporate tax on what value? 1 lakh rupees is the corporate income, and on that he has to pay that money. But what he did, he told the government, no, 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 sold only how much? 60 units. I have not sold how many units? I have not sold 100 units. I have sold only how much? 60 units. So my profit is not 1 lakh. My profit is how much? 60,000. Fine. But he sold to whom? And he sold how many units? Actually, he sold 100 units. But he is claiming to government how many units? 60 units. But GST is on how many units? 100 units. So he is going to make a claim of how much? 180 rupees multiplied by how much? 100. That means B is claiming how much? 18,000. Now government will ask him. He is asking for GST refund of how much? 18,000. That means how much you have sold? 100 units. And what you are claiming? 60 units. Fine. Here you can call. Another way. Like you are not sure how many units A have sold. So a team of indirect taxes people, GST people, have went to investigation at A's premises, and they went to their godown and they counted how many inventories are there. How many inventories are there? They found that the inventories are there by A is somewhere around 270. 270 inventories are there. These 270 items are lying in their godown. And when they check the data, they have found that they have manufactured how much? 370 they have manufactured and 370 they have manufactured. But they have inventory of how much? That means how much they have sold? 100 units. Fine. So this is how to make sure those people who are producing and generating income, they must pay their tax. They need not to pay what? GST. But they have to pay the tax on their income through what? Production. So two things you have to understand here. When a producer is doing the production, on production, government is not asking them to what? Pay the tax. But through production, what income they are generating, they have to pay what? Tax on the income which they have generated after manufacturing and selling the goods. So this input credit system, input credit means what? You paid 180 rupees to whom? A. Now government have refunded that 180 rupees to back to whom? B. So this 180 rupees is what? Input credit. Input credit. Fine. Input credit system. So this input credit system ensures that GST must be paid properly. Number two, it clears how much amount of quantity is sold by whom? Producers. Understood? So now move forward. B is sold to whom? C, and give the invoice of how much? 3,540 rupees invoice they have given to whom? C. So C have paid how much? 3,540. Now suppose here C made the valuation of how much? 2,000. C also made the valuation of how much? 2,000. So if C did the valuation of 2,000, how C is going to create his bill? Production cost? Production cost? 3,540. Value addition? Value addition is of how much? 2,000. And GST, or you can say that what? GST or input credit. Input credit of how much? 540. Minus here also it is what? Minus rest of the thing is what? Added, but it will be what? Minus. Then total value is how much? Total value is 5,000. So this 5,000 rupees plus what? 18% GST. How much? 5,900 have to be paid by whom? Customer. Now what will happen? Now the C will go to whom? Government and pay how much? 540. 5,040 is going to be paid by whom? C have collected GST of how much? 900. So he is going to give that GST. How much he collected from the customer? 900 GST has collected, na? So 900 rupees will go to whom? Government, and government will give how much? 540. Understood? Now see the problem, right? What is the problem in this system? There are certain goods before its value addition. Before its value addition. For example, here B to C. B to C tax rate is how much? 18%. Suppose that it's a man-made fiber used for clothes making. So it's a fiber, it is attracting the GST rate of how much? 18%. But once the material is going to be processed by C, and he made what? Fabric. What B is giving to whom? C. Listen here. What B is given to C? Fabric or raw material. That is what? Man-made fiber. So what B is selling to C? Man-made fiber. So man-made fiber is attracting interest. Oh, sorry, GST rate of how much? 18%. But once this man-made fiber become what? Fabric. This fabric is having a GST rate of 5%. This fabric has a GST rate of how much? 5%. So because this GST has a rate of how much? 5%. 5%. And valuation is of how much? 5,000 is the valuation, na? So because the valuation, total value is how much? 5,000. But GST rate here changed to what? 5%. So GST will be applicable at what rate? 5% rate. How much? 250. So you are going to receive the tax from the customer of how much? At the rate of 250. But you have paid to the government at what rate? 540, that is 18% rate. So you paid the GST at 18% rate. But you are going to get the input at what rate? 5% rate. Are you going to agree with this? No, no customer, no seller is going to agree with this. But government said that, okay, don't worry. How much you have paid? 540. How much you are going to get? 250 you are going to get, na? Let's check. So government is going to thoroughly check it. And after checking, government is going to refund total amount of how much? 540 to him. Earlier, government is supposed to return how much? Only. But now government will return his entire amount. So the problem in the input credit system comes when you are having higher GST on input, but lesser GST on what? Output. Higher GST rate on input and lower GST rate on what? Output. Fine. And this system is known as inverted duty structure. What? Inverted duty structure means you are paying higher GST rate on input and you are getting lower GST on what? Output. And this is why there is a problem. Why there is a problem? Because he will get the refund of his 550 rupees only after due consideration. And here due consideration may take how much? 2 to 3 months. Now suppose that he is a small scale business person. So if he is selling 100 quantity, if he is selling 100 quantity, how much amount is blocked with the government? 54,000. So 54,000 rupees is blocked with government, and government which is supposed to return that input credit within the 1 month. It takes how much? 3 to 4 months. So your unnecessary money is what? Blocked. Your money is what? Unnecessarily blocked with whom? Government. So this is one of the major problems in what? GST. And for that purpose, what we have to do? Rationalize the GST rate. How? Either we should increase what? From 5% to what? 18% here. If government said that, okay, let's increase what? GST rate from what? 5% to what? 18%. Then all these sellers, they are going to protest the government. Already our industry is not going very well. And now you are going to do what? Increase the GST rate. So you should not increase the GST rate. and especially those states who are consumer, they will protest. Why? Because if the GST rate will increase, their income capability is going to what? Decrease. So the rate which is 5% will increase to how much? 18%. But because of the higher rate, public's consumption capacity is going to what? Decrease. And that is why they are protesting. No, no, no. Don't increase it to what? 18%. Let it be what? 5%. Acha, if it is 5%, then make it also what? 5%. Now, if it is going to be 5%, fine. Then those states who are earning very well, with what rate? 18% rate. So they are saying that no, you should not do that. Government said why? Because we are having already very good income of what? 18% rate. Why you are decreasing it? You should not decrease it. So states and union, they are what? Divided on that matter. Whether it is decreased, whether we should decrease here or where we should have to increase. So increase, decrease, decrease, increase, game is going on, and that is why this inverted duty structure is a big issue. And the solution to inverted duty structure is what? The solution to inverted duty structure is go for what? GST rationalization. What is GST rationalization? GST rationalization means we should have what? Uniform structure or ascending order. For example, here it will be 12%, then or here 5%, 12%, 18%. This is fine. But if it's going to be what? 18, 5, 18, then it is going to be what? Problematic. Why it is problematic? You paid the GST at higher rate, but you will receive the GST input at what rate? Lower rate. So have you understood the problem of input credit? What input credit problem is there, which is known as what? Inverted duty structure. So inverted duty structure and GST rationalization, these are two major important issues in the system of what? GST. Fine. Third issue in the GST system. Third issue in the GST system is that for being a GST person, fine, you must have minimum, means any business who is having the income of or business of 40 lakh and above. Fine. So suppose that you are doing a business and your business value, annual business value of revenue, fine, not profit, revenue, what items you are selling that is having the value of how much? 40 lakh or above. Then you must be a what? Under GST. 40 lakh rupees. Now what happens? People know that if I will go for what? 40 lakh and above, then I have to be the part of what? GST system. That means I must create what? Invoice. If I am having income of 40 lakh or above, then I have to go for what? I have to must go for what? GST invoice. Fine. So GST invoice is must. So sometimes those people who are not interested to create invoices, why they are not interested? Because they know that if invoice will be created, government can easily find out how much income you have generated by selling those goods. For example, here, what is the price? 1,000. Fine, 1,000. And if you will create a GST invoice, government will immediately know that how much he have made. Suppose that 100 unit he have made and sold, then how much money he have made? 1 lakh. So if he sold 100 unit in 10 days, 100 unit in how many days? 10 days. Or suppose that 5 days. So in 5 days he sold how many units? 100 units. So by this, how much unit we have sold in a month? 5 days. In the 30 days, how much unit? In 5 days he is selling how much unit? 100. Then 30 days, 600 unit, means monthly income how much? 6 lakhs. Annual income is what? 72 lakhs. So he must be GST compliance or not? He must have what? GST number, and he must release what? GST invoice. Otherwise, he will be what? Punished. So now government exactly know that how much income you are generating. But the problem is until unless you are going to threshold of what? Threshold of 40 lakhs. Now suppose he have annual income of 36 lakh. He have an annual income of how much? 36 lakh. Means in a month he is selling how many units? 300 units he is selling. That's why monthly income is how much? 3 lakhs. So annual income is what? 36 lakh. Now he saw that his sale is rising. Monthly he is selling how much? 300 units and making how much money? 3 lakh rupees he is making every month. And he saw that his sale is rising. And he know that once sale is going to reach to what? 40. He have must comply what? GST. Now he started doing what? Now he started doing extracurricular activities. Means he is trying to undermine the invoice. And see, there is a chain A to B, B to C, then customer. A created GST invoice when he is selling to whom? B. So automatically A have to pay that money which he has received from whom? B. Similarly, B have created the GST invoice while selling to whom? C. So automatically B is liable to pay that money which he has received from whom? C. So everyone is compliance of what? GST. Fine. Then what buyers and seller did? When he was selling this product to whom? Customer. He said that, Aisa, without bill, price will be decreased by 900 rupees. Acha. Bill. Because I need a guarantee. He said, what you are talking? My name is guarantee. I am the guarantee. Don't worry. I am the guarantee. If something happens, my God, Mummy Kasam, I will give you the new product. Don't worry about the guarantee. So he took the risk. He took the risk. And because he took the risk, and he is a valuable customer of whom? See? And he was well treated by cold drink, samosa snacks was given by whom? See? And customer feel privileged. Customer feel what? Privileged. And then C informed to whom? B. Ki, I need one item without bill. It will be happy thing for me as well as you. B informed to whom? A. So now there is a parallel chain. A, B, C, and customer. All of them they are working on what? Without bill to evade what? GST. Fine. So GST should not be given. That means you can completely hide that income. So now, if A is going to sell, then he is going to receive how much? 1,000. If this 1,000 rupees sale is visible anywhere? No. Means what the profit he is going to make by selling this price, he is not going to pay any income tax to whom? Government. Fine. And see how this chain grows. This customer got a royal treatment by whom? Seller C. And because he got the royal treatment, and but this royal treatment happened at that shop. But he want to show others, his near and dear, कि I am being treated as a royal person at this shop. I am being treated as a what? Royal person at this shop. He want to show other people, and this is the human nature. कि I am being respected too much at that place. Fine. So he asked his friend, कि suppose that was smartwatch. Yeah, why you are not wearing smartwatch? It's very good, blah blah blah, and blah blah blah. So he said, yeah, I was thinking, but I do not know any good shop. Alright? Chal bhai, I'll take you that shop. Now he took him in this shop. And when this shop owner saw the customer is coming, he is coming. Hurry, 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 bhai sahab. Please, 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 please. Have a seat. Have a seat. Hey, cold drink. Hey, how sir? Kaise aina hua? How are you? After a long time, how's the family? Everyone? Tea, coffee, and the person who went with him, he was like, इसको देख के लगता नहीं है कि कोई इसकी इतनी इज्जत कर सकता है. Somebody is going to give that kind of respect to him. यार मतलब जबरदस्त. Deal happened, and he said that the new one, his friend, he said that I need a bill. He said, "Arre, what bill? He himself is a bill. He is a guarantee. Don't worry about that. I'm also using this watch for almost 1.5 years. Nothing happened. So you should not worry. And you can save how much? 900 rupees. So in this way, they create a chain. And sometimes what happens? Suppose his friend who purchased the watch, that watch got some issues. And he got scared. Ki, no, I do not have a bill and guarantee, then what will happen? He ran to this shop. He came there and he said that I have purchased this watch. He said, arre, 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 how are you? Everything is fine? Started giving the same treatment. My watch is not working. Arey, don't worry, I'm giving you another one. Just put that watch for what purpose? Repair purpose. For that time, I'm giving another watch. For that time, you have another watch. And when your watch will be repaired, you can come and collect your watch. Fine. So in this way, he did a kind of repair work free of cost. When people are going to get something free, fine, people are going to mad. Now he earned the respect from this customer as well as his friend. Now both of them, they are going for what? Mouth publicity of that shop. And that is why a market like Gafar Market in Delhi, fine, Gafar Market in Delhi, like Nehru Place in Delhi, is created. Everything, everything they are selling without bill. And when you will go there, na, even you are a new customer, even you are a new customer, they will give you kind of a treatment. You will like that. Yeah, he's my brother. We got like lost in the Kumbh Mela. He's going to that kind of treatment. You will feel that, oh my God, what is this? And that is why people got this treatment, royal treatment, and they will agree for what? And this market is known as parallel economy. Parallel economy. It is working in the parallel of the system or not. So this is called what? Parallel economy. Why? Because one is a regular economy, whereas other economy is working what? Without bill, without other things. And India among G20 countries is the biggest market of what? Parallel economy. So a lot of activities are happening on what? Lot of activities are happening on the basis of what? Without billing. And that is why digitalization of economy is required. Because all these transactions are happening in what? Cash. So we cannot go for no cash, but if we will go for what? Less cash. So transactions are being what? Recorded. Transactions will be what? Recorded. Fine. For example, if you will go to certain shops, fine, and you scan, fine, if you scan. So certain shops will give you an option to pay through UPI via credit card out. Because RuPay credit card is there. So RuPay credit card allow you to pay through what? UPI. But this is available only those shops which are registered merchant. So how people are doing this? They also have a QR scanner. They also have this people also have QR scanner, but they have two QR scanner. One which is a bank account of this company, and which is used for what? Normal sale, selling with the bill. And when they have to pay without bill, then they are using their personal bank account or their family's bank account. So one is company's bank account. All the legal transactions is going to this, and all the illegal transactions which are not billed, they are going on this. So when you scan this personal account, you will not get an option to pay with what? Credit card. Why? Because it's not a merchant account, and credit cards allow the payment on through what? Only merchant account. Fine. So if government is going to strictly implement this less cash system, so how less cash economy is helpful to prevent the backdrop of what? Backdrop of parallel economy. And if the parallel economy is going to reduce, then tax collection is going to what? Increase. And increased tax collection will allow the government to less dependent on what? Borrowing for revenue expenditure. Right now, government is borrowing, and because we are not able to fulfill our revenue expenditure through taxation, so government using some of the borrowing for what purpose? Revenue expenditure. But if our tax receipt will increase, all the revenue expenditure we can fulfill with what? Tax, and all the borrowing we can use for what purpose? Capital formation purpose. So an efficient taxation system will always have a potential to accelerate economy in a greater manner. So tax reforms are required at its legal level as well as its administrative level. Understood the GST? Okay, thank you. For online only, not for you. तुम्हें क्या लगा